The white line deception. The wind had teeth that morning. It bit through Walt Merrick's coat as he stepped out of the warehouse and stared at the cracked concrete lot that held his entire world. 2 aging rigs, 1 flatbed, and the family name fading from the siding of the office trailer. Merrick Hauling Est, 1976. By the look of it, 1976 was the last time someone had touched up the paint. Lena leaned against the truck, one boot propped up, arms crossed. She'd beaten him there again. "You see the bill from Cargoplex?" she asked without looking up. Walt grunted. "You mean the one that says they're 30 days late again?" "No, the one that says we're 30 days late to them. Fuel surcharge." He didn't answer. Just walked past her and unlocked the office. Inside, the propane heater hissed to life as he poured yesterday's coffee into a cracked mug and leaned over the dispatch desk. 2 local runs scheduled. Combined, they barely cover payroll for the week. "Maybe we should take the loan," Lena said, coming in behind him. "We already have 2. Then we need a 3rd. Or a miracle." The miracle arrived in the form of a man named Victor Hale, who called just after noon. He was polite, crisp, and quick. Said he worked with a logistics firm subcontracting overflow hauls for rural test equipment, agricultural, nothing hazardous. The pickup was near Kansas City, the drop-off in Maine, and the load had to be there in 3 days. No DOT inspections, no substitutions. $15,000 flat. Walt's first instinct was to hang up. Then Victor said, "We asked around. You come recommended. Good track record, clean safety record, never missed a delivery." Lena, listening over speaker, raised an eyebrow. "From who?" "Colleagues," Victor replied smoothly. "We do our homework." "What kind of test equipment?" "Obsolete gear. Remote sensors from a USDA grant project. You'll pick up sealed crates. We handle the paperwork. You just drive." Walt tapped his fingers on the desk. "Cash?" "Clear check. Half now, half upon delivery." The phone clicked once, and a PDF popped into their email showing a transfer confirmation to Merrick Hauling's bank account, $7,500. Already in motion. "How'd you get our banking info?" Lena asked sharply. "We do our homework," Victor repeated. Later that night, as Walt checked tire pressure in the freezing dark, Lena packed travel bags into the cab. "You sure about this?" he asked. "No, but I'm sure I don't want to lay off Curtis and Maria next week." He nodded. Inside the cab, her son Aaron sat hunched over a GoPro rig, editing dashcam footage from their last run. His earbuds were in, but he glanced up when she opened the door. "This the main trip?" he asked. "Yeah, you're riding with us." "Seriously?" "You can handle 3 days of boredom in rest-stop bathrooms. It'll be good for you." He rolled his eyes but smiled. "Can I film it?" She hesitated. "Just don't upload anything." They departed at dawn. The crates were waiting for them in Kansas. 4 industrial-grade boxes, locked and bolted. No markings except for yellow stickers labeled Surplus USDA Monitoring Division. Victor didn't show in person. Another man, younger, forgettable, with a prepaid phone, gave them a manifest and waved them off. By the time they hit Illinois, Aaron was asleep. Lena drove. Walt stared out the passenger window, quiet. "You think it's weird?" she asked. "I think it's money." "No inspections? No weigh stations?" "Means the buyer's in a hurry. Could be nothing." She nodded. But her eyes flicked to the rearview mirror more often than usual. The early stretch of highway was mostly empty. Frost lining the shoulders, the radio a low hum of AM static and half-lost country ballads. Lena drove the first shift, sunglasses masking the strain in her eyes. Walt rode shotgun, sipping gas station coffee from a foam cup that leaked down his sleeve. Aaron dozed in the sleeper, with a hoodie pulled over his head and a GoPro tucked under one arm like a teddy bear. It was the kind of morning truckers lived for. Quiet, open road, cruise set. But something was off. By the time they hit eastern Missouri, Lena had seen the black SUV 3 times. Once back in Kansas, idling just off the frontage road as they merged onto the interstate. Again at a rest stop, parked with its hood up, a man pretending to check something under the engine. And now, in her mirror, just barely visible 4 cars back. "Dad," she said, eyes still on the road, "you see that?" Walt craned his neck, then looked forward again. "Could be nothing. Could be." A few miles passed. The SUV took the same exit they did when they stopped for diesel. Lena turned sharply into the lot and parked beside the pumps. The SUV rolled past slowly and continued around the station to a spot near the back of the building, half concealed behind a row of parked rigs. Lena climbed out and stretched, pretending not to watch. Walt stood beside her, quiet. "You think it's hail?" she asked. Walt shrugged. "If it is, we're not doing anything wrong. Feels like someone's making sure of that." Aaron hopped down from the sleeper, yawning. "Stretch break?" "Yeah, stay close." They walked inside. Lena went to the counter to grab coffee and jerky, while Walt made a call from the corner. He returned 5 minutes later, tight-lipped. "Called Keller," he said. "They've never heard of Cedar Logistics." Lena froze mid-sip. "Thought they said Keller recommended us?" "Apparently not." She tossed the coffee in the trash. Back on the road, things stayed quiet. Unnervingly so. The SUV vanished, then reappeared behind a different convoy, then vanished again. Walt took over driving as dusk settled in, and Lena thumbed through the sealed manifest, trying to shake the unease that had crept in like the cold air around her boots. There was nothing strange on the surface. 3 industrial crates, all labeled as obsolete USDA sensor gear. But she'd hauled federal surplus before. There were always barcodes, sign-offs, tracking sheets. This paperwork had none of it, just a typed line. Property of Fieldtech Research Group. Final return. She looked up Fieldtech. No website. No company registration, just a few mentions in old agricultural conference pamphlets from the early 2000s. Aaron, sprawled out again in the back, flipped through camera footage on his laptop. He paused and zoomed in on a frame, one captured as they left the warehouse in Kansas. A man standing far in the distance, just barely caught in the frame, looking straight at their truck. Aaron leaned forward. "Hey, Mom," he said. She turned. Why would someone stand in the middle of a field just to watch us leave? They made it to a motel outside Columbus by midnight. 2 double beds, thin walls, and a heater that sounded like it ran on gravel. Lena couldn't sleep. She sat in the dark, staring at the manifest again. G-men. They weren't carrying anything illegal, not as far as she knew. But it didn't feel like a mistake anymore. It felt like a test. A phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Unknown number. 1 line of text. Stay en route. No stops. No contact. No name. No reply option. She woke Walt. He looked at the message, his jaw tight. Then he grabbed a wrench from the toolbox, stepped into the cold, and walked out to the trailer. She followed, teeth chattering. Together, they unlatched the side panel. Inside the steel crate, nestled between fake sensor housings, was a manila envelope. No lock. No seal. Just a label in block letters. To be destroyed. The motel parking lot was quiet, but not empty. A late-model sedan sat under the farthest light, its windows fogged from the cold. Lena couldn't tell if someone was inside. She kept her voice low anyway. The envelope sat between her and Walt, like a live wire. They'd placed it on the hood of the truck, under the weak beam of a handheld flashlight. Walt ran a hand through his beard, glanced over his shoulder, then picked it up. It wasn't sealed, just folded shut like someone assumed curiosity wouldn't be a factor. He opened it. "No, not once." She paced in a tight circle. "This isn't just a cover-up. This is premeditated. They planted this stuff with us." "It's not in the crates," Walt said. "They probably offloaded the hardware somewhere else. What they left behind is cleanup, the trail they were supposed to destroy." Aaron tapped the top of the envelope. "So why didn't they just burn it?" That stopped them both. Lena glanced back toward the sedan parked across the lot. Still there. No movement. "Maybe it was a mistake," she said. "Or maybe someone wanted us to find it." Walt finished. Back inside the motel, they laid everything out on the bed under a yellowed lamp. Lena photographed each page with her phone, just in case. Walt paced by the window. Aaron connected to the Wi-Fi and started searching. Northridge Systems, he said after a few minutes. Looks like a defense consulting firm based out of Virginia. No public website. Denny Wen's registry says they're a subcontractor. Their mailing address is a law office. Field Tech? Walt asked. Same game. Shell company, no web presence. Registered once in Texas, then dissolved a year later. Lena turned to Walt. We need to get this to someone. He didn't respond. Dad? I'm thinking. About what? He looked up. His face was drawn, shadowed in the dim light. About whether anyone we take this to won't just call the same people who hired us. They left the motel at 3 a.m., driving with the lights off until they were back on the highway. The SUV was nowhere in sight, but Lena was sure they weren't alone. Someone was watching, not to stop them, not yet. They weren't a threat, not until they told someone. That morning, while Walt drove, Lena called an old contact, a former union representative turned freight auditor named Rick Maddox, who'd done quiet favors for them in the past. He picked up on the first ring. Merrick? Jesus, haven't heard from you in a year. You still running that scrap rig? Got a question, Rick. You ever heard of Cedar Logistics? A pause. Nope. What about Field Tech or Northridge Systems? Another pause. No, but if they're popping up now, they're probably downstream of a laundering contract. You mean fake? I mean front-loaded. You move goods through a dozen subsidiaries, so nobody owns the whole trail. Why? Lena debated, telling him. Then decided against it. Just a name that came up. Watch your back. These days, some clients don't care if you know too much. They care if they know you know it. She hung up and stared at the horizon. They'd been hired because they were invisible. Lass, independent, small, off the books. Lass. Now they were carrying evidence that tied private arms shipments to a classified weapons program, funneled through innocent third-party drivers and buried under false manifests. And someone had made sure the trail ended with them. They crossed into Pennsylvania just after dawn, weaving between long-haul rigs and tired commuters, the frost on the fields burning off in slow ribbons. The truck cab was quiet. Walt drove, gripping the wheel tighter than usual. Lena sat in the passenger seat, flipping through photos of the documents on her phone again and again, like she was trying to memorize them with her eyes. In the back, Aaron was deep into an encrypted chat forum. He followed, a small network of digital activists and rogue researchers. I've got someone, Aaron finally said, breaking the silence. Walt glanced in the mirror. Who? He goes by Reticle. Real name's Nico Reyes. Used to work for the Post. Got fired after leaking a black site memo in 2019. He's been running a Substack out of Vermont ever since. People say he's legit. People on a message board? He verified one of the NSA dump stories before the mainstream even touched it. He knows how to stay alive. Lena hesitated. Does he meet people in person? Sometimes. But he's paranoid. I'll have to vet us first. Do not send him everything, Walt warned, just enough to get a bite. Aaron nodded. I'll handle it. By midday, they reached a rest stop off I-80. Lena went inside for coffee while Walt filled the tank. Aaron stayed in the cab, eyes glued to his screen. A message popped up in his burner inbox, sent from a temporary domain. Saw your preview. Need confirmation. Audio or unique marker. Meet possible, if real. Aaron looked over his shoulder. Walt was still by the pump. He hesitated, then uploaded one of the pages from the envelope, the one with the registration number matching their truck. Before hitting send, he typed, "We didn't know. They used us." When Lena returned, Walt was waiting by the door. Something's not right, he said. She followed his eyes toward a black pickup parked along the far edge of the lot. A man sat inside, alone, not eating, not looking at a phone, just waiting. Same truck had passed him twice already that morning. Lena stepped toward it, but Walt grabbed her elbow. No, let them watch. You're not even curious who they are? I'm pretty sure we already know. Back on the road, Aaron broke the silence. He wants to meet, he said. Tonight, in a public spot. Says he's driving south now. He wants proof in person. Lena nodded. Where? Diner outside Montpelier, Vermont. 9 p.m. Walt didn't speak, but the tightening of his jaw was enough. They stopped to switch drivers in western Massachusetts. While Walt napped, Lena pulled off to take a call, using a prepaid burner she'd bought at a truck stop the day before. She called a name she hadn't spoken in years. Tasha Green, a former National Guard intel officer who'd left under mysterious circumstances and now worked corporate security for a major shipping firm in Albany. Tasha, it's Lena Merrick. A beat of silence. Then, Jesus, are you in trouble? You could say that. Who else have you called? No one else who could fight back. Tasha sighed. I've got about 5 minutes before I have to pretend this call never happened. What do you need? I need to know who's behind Cedar Logistics and Northridge Systems. Tasha was quiet. Then, where are you? Massachusetts. You still hauling? We're making a stop. Then, listen carefully, Tasha said. You're on a cleanup route. What does that mean? They use that term for burn runs, transports that are set up to bury trace material. Either the cargo disappears or the hauler gets discredited. Ideally, both. Lena's blood went cold. You're telling me this was the plan? I'm telling you, you were never supposed to know, but someone wanted you to. Why? Because there's no better way to destroy evidence than to tie it to a fabricated extremist leak. One that looks too perfect, too polished, makes the real documents easier to discredit. The moment you try to go public, you become the story. The line clicked dead. They arrived in Vermont as the sun dipped below the pines, casting shadows across winding back roads. The diner was quiet, sitting like a relic from another era. Checkerboard floors, faded boots, a jukebox that hadn't played in years. Reyes arrived late. He wore a wool coat, a ball cap, and eyes that never stopped scanning the room. He slid into the booth across from them without shaking hands. I don't have long, he said. Lena slid the envelope across the table. Reyes opened it, flipped through the pages. He paused at the photo with the registration number. His mouth tightened. You didn't leak this already? He asked. No, Lena said. We're not stupid. Reyes nodded. Then you need to know something. He pulled a tablet from his bag and set it on the table. Huh? Nah. On the screen was a breaking news article. Headline, Radical Trucking Cell Intercepted an Arms Leak Attempt. Subhead, FBI reports domestic threat posed by rogue Ohio-based transport firm with suspected extremist ties. Photos loaded under the headline. One was of Lena, grainy, taken from an old union rally. Another was of their truck. This went live 20 minutes ago, Reyes said. The story's already written. You're just playing your part. Lena stared at the tablet. The article was only a few hundred words, but it hit like a sledgehammer. Her name, their company, mentions of questionable political affiliations, transport anomalies, and unconfirmed but credible reports of involvement in a smuggled data plot targeting national security. They weren't being accused of finding something. They were being accused of trying to leak it. She looked at Reyes. How is this possible? No one knows. They knew the moment you found the envelope, he cut in. You were either going to keep driving, stay quiet, or look. They're prepared for each version. You looked. Now they activate the narrative. Walt leaned over the tablet, jaw clenched. There's nothing here that's real. That doesn't matter, Reyes said. Your name, your face, your company. They'll flood search results with this. Nobody will believe your version, and if you try to prove it, you'll look exactly like what they say you are. A staged leak, a false flag, a radical trying to martyr yourself. He glanced toward the window. I have a contact who can help, but if you stay on the road, you'll be flagged within hours. DOT, toll cameras, patrols. You'll need a new rig, burner phones, cash only. Lena leaned back in the booth. So that's it? We run? Reyes shook his head. You survive. until the right story gets out. They left the diner through the kitchen, slipping out the back while Reyes paid cash for coffee he didn't drink. The parking lot was too exposed, so they ducked into the shadows of the adjacent tree line, circled behind a tractor dealership, and reconnected with the truck 4 blocks away. Walt took the wheel. Lena sat up front, scanning every intersection. "Do you trust him?" she asked. "No," Walt said. "But he didn't have to warn us." They hit Route 302 and headed east into the back roads of Vermont, away from the interstates. Trees arched over the road like blackened ribs. The cell signal dropped. Snow began to fall. Aaron worked silently in the sleeper, his laptop hooked to an inverter. He'd already wiped his online footprint and disconnected all tracking on his equipment. But that wasn't enough. "I'm going to need to burn my ID," he said. Lena turned. "What?" "They'll have my name now. From the article. I posted to that board. Even if I used a VPN, they'll link it back through metadata or timing." Walt nodded grimly. "Do it." Aaron pulled out a flash drive and tossed it into the ashtray. A few hours later, they parked the truck in a clearing near an abandoned ranger station. Walt walked the perimeter while Lena and Aaron rigged a portable antenna and a power bank. Using a signal booster, Aaron transmitted an encrypted message to Reyes's contact, someone going by the name Harbor Watch. Coordinates were exchanged. A new meeting spot was arranged. A fuel depot near Bangor, Maine, 36 hours. The depot was supposedly run by sympathetic union retirees who owed Reyes favors. They would go through with the delivery, but not to the original client. The evidence would change hands under a new light. But the hardest part would be getting there unseen. By morning, the snow had thickened. Walt wiped down the truck with bleach spray, cleaned every window and handle, then changed the plates with an old dummy set he kept in the tool compartment just in case. He wasn't sure what bothered him more, that this was happening, or that it didn't feel entirely unfamiliar. They stopped at a remote general store in New Hampshire to pick up burner phones, flares, and another can of diesel. The clerk looked at Lena's face a little too long. When she got back in the cab, Aaron checked the news again. "There's a whole thread now," he said. "A former Homeland Security analyst just posted a video saying our truck was previously seen in fringe anti-government convoys." "What the hell does that mean?" Lena snapped. "They're making it up," Aaron said. "They're laundering the story through unofficial channels, conspiracy pages, blog posts. It builds pressure, so when they drop a statement, the country's already half convinced." A new headline had gone up. "Leaked docs point to possible false flag operation in Maine." And under it, a subheader. "Domestic terror risk alert raised in northeastern states." That night, they slept in a cab off a maintenance road behind a lumber yard. The only warmth came from body heat and shared blankets. Walt took first watch, standing under the pine trees with a thermos of instant coffee and a .45 tucked in his waistband. He remembered a different kind of war, one fought overseas, where at least you knew who the enemy was. Now, the enemy wore suits, wrote headlines, and smiled while they pinned lies to your name. The sun came late, smothered behind gray clouds that felt heavy enough to fall. The Merricks pulled out of the tree line at 6:11 a.m., tires crunching frozen gravel, diesel coughing into the cold. The old rig looked anonymous now, scrubbed, plated, and stripped of decals, but Walt knew it was only a matter of time before someone looked too closely. The warehouse looked abandoned at first. Weeds grew through the pavement, and the overhead door hung half off its frame. But as the Merricks approached, a single red light flicked on above the bay. They idled near the dock. A gruff voice crackled from a speaker above. "You got freight?" "We've got the truth," Lena said. The speaker paused. Then, "That's not the passphrase." Aaron leaned forward. "Liberty dies in delay," he called out. A long silence. Then slowly, the rusted door began to rise. Inside, the warehouse was cleaner than expected. Metal racks, pallets, old forklifts, and a single makeshift office enclosed by plywood and heat lamps. Roy Carver was in his 70s, but built like a grain silo, with a crooked nose and calloused hands that looked capable of crushing skulls or fixing alternators. He barely said hello, just pointed to the truck. "You bring the envelope?" Lena nodded. She handed it to him. Roy took it, walked into the office, and shut the door. They heard the whine of a scanner. Walt leaned against a post and stretched his back. "We're running out of road," he said. Lena watched the door. "You trust him?" "I trust that Reyes trusts him." "That's a lot of trust. It's all we've got." 10 minutes later, Roy stepped back out. He didn't look happy. "This is worse than I thought," he said. "If even half of what's in here checks out, it means a private arms ring's been operating under USDA surplus tags for years, with civilian contractors used as disposable cover." Walt crossed his arms. "So what happens now?" "I've got a secure line. A few people left in the press who haven't sold their souls. We get this to them, fast. And what happens to us?" Roy met his eyes. "You don't go home. Not for a long time." Aaron flinched at that. He'd been quiet since they arrived, still processing what it meant to be the villain in a story everyone had already heard. Lena stepped forward. "What if we go public ourselves?" Roy shook his head. "Too late. You do that, you're fuel for the fire. They'll paint you as radicals doubling down. It'll bury the truth deeper." Lena opened her mouth to argue, but a low, distant rumble stopped her. They turned toward the open dock door. Down the hill, across the service road, 2 SUVs were crawling into view, government black. "No plates," Roy cursed. "They tracked your burner. How long ago did you call Reyes?" 5 hours, Aaron said. "That's all it takes." Roy slammed a switch inside the office. The lights in the warehouse snapped off. Metal gates dropped over the back exits. Lena rushed to the cab. Walt climbed into the driver's seat, threw it into gear. "Front bay's too slow," Roy shouted. "You need the drop ramp north side." They turned the rig, tires screeching on concrete, and barreled down the road toward a rusted gate. Aaron grabbed his GoPro and aimed it at the crate. "Film everything," Lena said. "Even if we go down, someone needs to know." The gate opened just enough. Walt punched the pedal. The truck roared out into daylight, narrowly missing the SUV now racing down the hill. Tires caught gravel. Snow kicked up behind them. No turning back now. The rig thundered down the snow-crusted access road as Lena gripped the handle above the passenger door, her heart pounding like a piston. In the mirror, the black SUVs gave chase, eating up ground on the turns. Walt held the wheel like it was an extension of his spine, eyes dead ahead. "There's a fork coming up," he said. "Gravel on the left, asphalt on the right." "Left," Lena barked. "Less predictable." Behind them, the SUVs fanned out. One took the right fork. The other 2 followed the Merricks into the tree-lined service route. Aaron sat on the sleeper floor, arms around his camera bag, recording through a slit in the cab's side curtain. The truck bounced and slid across frost-pitted dirt, branches smacking the side mirrors like skeletal fingers. "We can't outrun them forever," Lena said. "We need to disappear." Walt nodded. "We split up." She looked at him. "I'll drive solo," he said. "They're tracking the truck. You 2 go out on foot, head for the depot Reyes mentioned. It's 2 miles northeast. Go through the tree line. Roy'll buy you time." Lena hesitated. "We're not leaving you behind." "You're not. I'm giving them something to chase." She knew better than to argue when his voice dropped like that. Still, it felt like losing something essential, like cutting a rope and hoping what was left didn't drift away. She climbed into the back, pulled Aaron close. "We move quiet, no lights, no phones. Copy." Walt slowed the truck just enough to open the passenger side jump door. The rig kept rolling as Lena and Aaron leapt down into the brush. By the time they scrambled up the embankment and ducked into the trees, the truck was already gone. The forest swallowed sound. "Ahmer." Lena led with her head low, boots crunching softly in the snow. Aaron followed close behind, keeping to her footsteps. She checked the compass Reyes had given her. A sleek little thing with no digital signal and a scratched metal housing. Northeast. They moved for 40 minutes without speaking. No lights. Just moon reflection and instinct. Somewhere behind them, engines snarled through the night like wolves. They crested a ridge and dropped into a shallow clearing where a rusted fuel tank sat beside a cinder block pump station. A single red triangle had been spray-painted on the door. the mark Reyes said to look for. Inside, it smelled like oil and stale air. But it was safe. For now. Meanwhile, Walt pushed the truck harder than he had in years. The engine rattled in protest. Sweat ran down his neck despite the cold. In the mirror, he saw one of the SUVs peel away, likely realizing the others had lost the scent. The lone vehicle stayed with him, trying to corner him toward the rail yard east of Bangor. He made a sharp turn off the main road and crashed through a wire gate, scattering snow and debris. He didn't know where he was headed, only that every mile away from Lena and Aaron was a mile bought. Finally, near an old paper mill, he cut the lights and ditched the truck in a loading dock. He crawled out the side and disappeared into the skeletal shadows of the derelict building. For a moment, it was quiet again. Then he heard footsteps behind him. Back in Washington, D.C., inside a pristine glass office overlooking the Potomac, Victor Hale sat before a wall of screens. He was lean, late 40s, dressed like a consultant, with dark eyes that never smiled. Behind him, a map tracked live pings across the Northeast. Most were DOT checkpoints, traffic cams, and phone towers. But 4 were active Intel tags devices, pinging from burner phones, EM signatures, and surveillance drones. One of the pings blinked out. Another popped up near Bangor. A young analyst stepped forward, nervous. "Sir, Merrick's son is uploading again. Small data packets. Not enough to leak it all, but—" "Let him," Hale said calmly. "Sir? If he leaks too little, he becomes a hoax. Too much, he becomes a villain. Either way, the country never gets the full story." He stood and walked toward the screen. On it, an image of Lena Merrick filled the frame. A snapshot taken from the diner security cam in Montpelier. "She doesn't know it yet," Hale said, "but she's about to be the most hated woman in America." The old depot was colder inside than the forest had been. Lena barricaded the door with a dented metal cabinet, while Aaron unpacked their satchel in silence. He moved like a machine. Efficient, careful, deliberate. No wasted energy. No questions. Billy, who was Billy. She watched him line up the GoPro, connect the signal booster, and boot his encrypted laptop off battery power. He didn't ask what to do. They both knew what had to happen next. "Start with the safest stuff," she said quietly. "Visuals, not names. Give people the shape of the truth." He nodded and began. Lena paced, the only sound her boots echoing on the concrete floor. She kept the revolver Walt had given her tucked in her coat, grip worn smooth by years of sweat and waiting. Every 15 minutes she checked the window slit for headlights. Nothing. Not yet. But that didn't mean they were alone. At 3:14 a.m., Aaron pressed send. The first packet went out to 3 recipients: Reyes, an underground leak site based in Finland, and an independent war crimes monitor in Toronto. It included 2 photos of shipping containers with mislabeled manifests, the Northridge Systems memo detailing component relabeling, a scan of the page linking their truck's registration to one of the loads. He encrypted the sender tag, embedded rotating IPs, and bounced the signal through a portable antenna stuck halfway out the depot's vent. The signal was weak. But it got through. A quiet tone confirmed receipt. Then came the second sound. Boots on gravel. Outside. Lena motioned for Aaron to kill the screen. He yanked the laptop shut. She eased to the window. A figure moved across the lot, flashlight off. No badge. No uniform. Just black clothing and gloves. Professional. Military style. Not local cops. She held her breath. May. The figure reached the pump station wall, paused, then. Jason kept walking. Past the depot. No sign of having seen them. Maine, 10 minutes later, a car engine started in the distance, and the figure was gone. Elsewhere, hundreds of miles south, Victor Hale stood in a room thick with digital noise. Screens displayed news feeds, Twitter trends, AI-generated heat maps. The news crawl on 3 major cable stations all ran the same breaking banner. Trucking family connected to subversive leak. One showed a still of Lena and Aaron at a gas station, grainy but framed like fugitives. Another ran a clip of Walt at a union protest from 2011, shouting into a megaphone about big government interference. It wasn't the truth, but it didn't have to be. It was the frame. Hale turned to his team. "Release the decoy docs," he said. "The ones with Russian formatting and fake GPS metadata." A younger operative blinked. "Sir, won't that confuse?" "Exactly." By morning, Walt Merrick was handcuffed to a steel chair in a freezing warehouse lit by halogen floodlights. He was bruised but breathing. 2 men stood across from him. One in tactical gear, silent, unmoving. The other dressed like a federal agent but without any identifying insignia. A third man entered. Walt knew him the moment he saw the eyes. Victor Hale. "Mr. Merrick," he said, tone calm. "You've become quite the celebrity." Walt didn't speak. "You're in possession of sensitive materials, documents obtained illegally. You've crossed state lines with the intent to distribute classified intel to foreign parties. That's a federal crime. Treason, some would say." Still, Walt said nothing. Hale smiled faintly. "You don't strike me as ideological. You strike me as someone who just wanted to keep his business afloat, feed his family, live quietly." He stepped closer. "That's what makes this tragic. Because now, your daughter and grandson are out there, being hunted, because of your mistake." Walt met his eyes. "You think this ends with a narrative and a headline?" "No," Hale said softly. "It ends with silence." He turned to leave. Walt leaned forward. "They've already sent the first packet," he said. That stopped Hale. "And they'll keep sending them. With or without me. With or without you." For the first time, Hale's calm slipped. Then it returned. "We'll see." Back at the depot, Aaron watched his inbox. The leak sites had begun to respond. Hafik, one posted an early analysis. Another flagged GPS inconsistencies, fake seeded by the decoy docs Hale had released. And one simply said, "WHO are you, and why is the FBI tracking our IP?" Lena rubbed her temples. "They're muddying the water. They've already tagged us as radicals," Aaron said. "Now they just have to discredit the data." A new alert popped up, this one from Reyes. "Get out now. They've found Walt. They're coming for you next. I'll meet you in Bar Harbor." They left the depot before dawn, cutting through the woods in near silence, following a frozen stream that eventually paralleled an old fire road. The cold bit through their clothes, but adrenaline made it bearable. The only sound was snow crunching beneath their boots and the occasional distant crack of ice settling. Lena knocked twice, paused, then once again, the sequence Reyes had given them. The lock clicked from the inside. The door opened a crack. Nico Reyes stepped back, holding a crowbar. Jue, his eyes were bloodshot, clothes wrinkled, beard longer than before. He didn't smile. "You made it," he said. Lena stared at him for a beat too long, then stepped through. The tunnel was narrow and damp, running beneath the docks and opening into what used to be a storage room. Now it held a makeshift workstation, monitors, wires, a portable generator, and a mesh net antenna stretched toward a ceiling vent. "I've got about an hour before someone sees the signal," Reyes said. "They're patrolling every node within 50 miles. Aaron set down the laptop and connected the drive. "Do you still have secure access?" he asked. "For now. But you need to understand something. What you have isn't going to convince the public." Lena narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean?" "Too many threads. Too much noise. Decoy files, forged memos, narrative pollution. Half of what you're carrying is real. The other half was planted to bury it. If we release it all, the whole thing gets thrown out, buried in conspiracy blogs, written off." "So what do we do?" Aaron asked. Reyes looked at him. "We make a choice." He pulled out a printed index of all the files on the drive, marked with a red pen. "These are the pieces that have corroboration. Backups, witnesses who've come forward in private. They'll hold up. He tapped another section, marked with blue. These? They're designed to discredit the rest, but they might be true. We just don't know. Lena crossed her arms. So we censor our own leak? No, Reyes said. We focus the blast. We lead with what sticks. Then we build from there. Aaron looked torn. But if we don't drop everything, they'll say we're hiding something. They already are, Reyes said. It doesn't matter. What matters is getting something out before they find us. Lena paced, thinking. And what about my father? Reyes shook his head. They've moved him. He's off-grid. If we push this out now, maybe, we make him too visible to disappear. She stopped pacing, then nodded once. Do it. 30 minutes later, Reyes hit upload. The secure link went out to 20 independent journalists, 5 international watchdogs, 3 documentary filmmakers, and 1 member of the United Nations Human Rights Committee. The data package was simple: 5 core files, 1 recording, and a manifesto. Aaron had written it on the back of a truck stop receipt the night before. A single line: we were the middlemen. We were supposed to be invisible, but the truth deserves names. As the upload reached 50%, Reyes's radio crackled. They found us. The radio on Reyes's desk crackled again. This time the voice was clear, calm, and unmistakably official. Eyes on confirmed targets at Bar Harbor Marina. 2 on foot. Entry breach authorized. Stand by. Reyes froze. Aaron's eyes shot to the screen. Upload, 62%. Lena didn't wait. She moved to the door, revolver drawn. How long do we have? She snapped. Reyes checked his watch. 5 minutes, maybe less. If they jam us, that's it. Aaron slid the hard drive into his bag and grabbed the second antenna cord, wrapping it tight. I can climb to the roof vent. Keep the signal clear. Buy us time. Too dangerous, Lena said. We don't have a choice. He was already halfway up the ladder before she could argue. Reyes handed Lena a second burner. This one's preloaded with mirror sights. If it finishes, you'll get a ping. If it doesn't, she looked him in the eye. Then we send it by hand. He gave her a grim nod. Aaron reached the vent shaft, pried it open, and squeezed through into the freezing wind. The marina stretched out below, boats bobbing in the bay, the horizon painted gray. But it wasn't the water he focused on. It was the black SUV pulling onto the dock. 2 men got out. Tactical gear. Suppressed rifles. Government issue. Unofficial style. He clipped the antenna to the highest point on the metal duct and fed the cable back down. The wind howled. His fingers burned from the cold. Back below, Reyes reset the uplink, 68%. The first bang on the door wasn't loud, more like a knock from someone wearing steel gloves. Then came the voice. Federal agents! Open the door! Lena raised her revolver and flattened against the wall. Reyes killed the lights. No one moved. Final warning, the voice shouted. Open the door or we breach. Then the world exploded in white. Flashbang. The door burst open. A boot hit the frame. 2 agents entered, scanning the dark with infrared goggles, and that's when Lena moved. She fired twice. The first round missed. The second hit center mass. The agent crumpled. The second raised his rifle, too slow. Reyes smashed a chair leg into his knee and tackled him into the wall. Another flashbang rolled into the room. Lena screamed, Aaron, go now! Up above, Aaron heard the commotion and saw lights flashing through the roof vent. His hand slipped. He lost grip and slid halfway down the metal shaft. A bullet pinged off the antenna mount. One of the agents had taken position outside. Ah! Aaron dove, sliding across the icy roof, antenna in hand. The laptop buzzed in his bag. Upload failed. Signal interrupted. No. He gasped. No, no, no. He pulled the burner Reyes gave him from his coat and stabbed the button Reyes had marked with red tape. The backup line went active. Mirrors engaged. Data resent. Inside, Reyes lay on the ground, blood pooling around his shoulder. One agent down, the other unconscious. Lena pulled Reyes toward the emergency exit. Leave me, he coughed. Get him out. I'm not losing anyone else, she said through gritted teeth. Reyes pressed a hand into her palm. It's done. The world knows. She looked. The burner in her hand buzzed once. Then again. Upload complete. 100%. Outside, sirens howled in the distance. Not just local. Federal. Lena and Aaron fled down the dock, darting between fuel tanks and coiled rope, until they reached a skiff tied to the last slip. The keys were in the ignition. Reyes had arranged it. Of course he had. They pushed off just as headlights swarmed the dock behind them. Lena looked back once, just once, and saw the flicker of red and blue lights consuming the shore. The leak hit the internet like a detonation. Within hours, encrypted documents were mirrored across 100 countries. News outlets were cautious at first, then bolder, then breathless. Headlines shifted from extremist truckers exposed to leaked documents suggest U.S. defense firms used civilian freighters in secret arms ring. Trucking family may have been patsies in government smuggling cover-up. Who are the Merricks, and why were they targeted? The spin didn't stop, but it fractured. Too many sources, too much evidence, too many eyes. A senator resigned. 2 intelligence contractors went silent. A congressional inquiry began. And somewhere, on a rented boat with a fake registration number, Lena Merrick and her son disappeared into the mist. 3 days after the upload, the world had not ended, but something inside it had shifted. Cable news anchors said phrases they'd once mocked: private arms networks, contractor laundering, domestic misdirection. Congressional subcommittees issued rushed press releases. Journalists tripped over themselves trying to confirm what had already spread. But most damning of all, no one denied the files existed. The silence spoke louder than denial ever could. In a basement holding sail on the outskirts of Washington, Walt Merrick sat shackled to a chair under flickering fluorescent lights. He hadn't been questioned in over a day. Not since the leak. Now, instead of pressure, there was quiet. Too quiet. He knew the tactic. Deprive a man of noise, and he'd fill the void with his own dread. But Walt didn't dread. He waited. On the 4th day, the door opened. Not with fury or urgency, but formality. The man who entered wore a blue suit with a security badge but no agency name. His glasses gleamed. His haircut was military tight. He sat down across from Walt with a small folder. "Mr. Merrick," he said, "we are resetting the table." Walt didn't move. "You're no longer being treated as a terror suspect, at least not formally. The optics have changed." "So you're not charging me?" "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you want to disappear or testify." Walt blinked. "What do you mean?" The man leaned forward. "You give us names. Real ones. Who leaked the documents to you, who packaged them, who distributed them after, and we paint you as a whistleblower, a victim, a reluctant hero caught in the crossfire." Walt stared at him. "Want me to flip on my own family?" "No," the man said smoothly. "We want you to distance yourself. Let the country forgive you. They don't like martyrs, Mr. Merrick, but they love redemption." Walt leaned in. "You could tell your people this. You framed the wrong family. You used us like tissue. And now that it backfired, you want a rewrite." The man didn't flinch. "I'll sit in this chair till my bones rot before I help you gut the truth again." The man stood and left. No threat, no last word. Just the sound of the door locking again. In a fishing village on the northern coast of Nova Scotia, a rented cottage sat tucked into the woods behind a shuttered crab shack. No phone, no internet, just radio and battery-powered lights. Lena boiled water for instant coffee while Aaron sat at the table, editing video. A small TV pulled in Canadian news via antenna. They watched in silence. A pundit spoke. "It's a Rorschach leak. Everyone sees what they want. Some call the Merricks heroes. Others say it's an elaborate hoax. Another, if it was a hoax, where's the rebuttal? Where's the outrage from the named agencies?" Aaron clicked through social media logs on his disconnected laptop. 2 million shares, he said. The core files. Unaltered mirrors. Most posted outside the U.S. Lena sipped her coffee. "How long before they come here?" Aaron looked up. "They already know. They just haven't decided if we're more dangerous as fugitives or as symbols. Back in D.C., Victor Hale watched as the story slipped further from his control. The counter-narrative he crafted, the fake chat room posts, the radical photoshops, the anonymous whistleblower testimonies, they had made impact, but the documents had legs. Too many respected outlets had verified portions. Too many independent analysts found matching military specs. His phone rang, a female voice on the other end. Calm, precise. "You're being reassigned, Victor." He didn't respond. "You played your hand. Now we need containment, not confusion." "I had containment," he said, until someone inside our own op flipped. There was a pause. "Or maybe you weren't as careful as you thought." The line went dead. Victor looked down at the folder on his desk. Inside were surveillance stills. One from the warehouse, another from Bar Harbor. Both showed the same boy, Aaron Merrick. He closed the file. They weren't done yet. It snowed all night in Nova Scotia. Lena sat on the front step of the cottage with her coat pulled tight, watching flakes fall onto the pines like a silent burial. The wood stove inside crackled softly. They had enough propane to last a few weeks, and a ham radio to listen for chatter. Everything else, food, fuel, hope, was wearing thin. Aaron came out quietly, boots crunching behind her. "They're talking about us again," he said, holding a shortwave receiver in one hand. "Some senator floated the idea of giving us asylum if we formally testify." Lena didn't turn. "They'll put us in a room, let the cameras flash, then let the story rot." Aaron sat beside her. "They still don't know who leaked the internal routing memos," he said. "The ones that prove Field Tech and Northridge Systems are tied to military logistics." Lena looked at him. "Because we never released them," Aaron nodded. "They're still on the drive. I held them back." She finally turned to him. "Why? Because I thought maybe we'd want a life." That stopped her. "I thought if we didn't burn the whole thing down, they might let us walk away, somewhere cold, somewhere quiet." She stared at him. Really saw him. "You were never meant for this." He smiled faintly. "That's what makes me perfect for it." Later that night, they spread the files out on the kitchen table again. Those last few remaining documents, the ones too damning to leak without detonating every bridge. Internal memos confirming a circular contract structure between Northridge Systems and military subcontractors for discrete international material transfer. Redirected federal funding tagged for infrastructure development routed to offshore entities. Surveillance logs of third-party haulers, including the Merricks, labeled as compartmentalized fail-safes. One memo simply read, "In the event of discovery, ensure that narrative fabrication preempts raw exposure. Public trust is more volatile than payloads." Aaron looked up. "If we release this, we don't just finish the story. We burn every bridge between the truth and whoever's left trying to twist it." Lena exhaled. "We might not get to come back from that." Aaron paused. "Then we make sure we're not the ones coming back, just the story." They activated a contingency Reyes had built before he died, a ghost release protocol. It required 3 separate logins, all from remote devices, to trigger a secure auto-upload across 12 platforms. 2 of those devices were already in place. One buried under a barn in Vermont, another left with an independent researcher in Iceland. The third? Aaron had it. He opened the case. Inside, a final drive, heavily encrypted, labeled only with a date and time. He connected it to the laptop. Lena stepped beside him. "If we hit confirm," she said, "we can't take it back." He looked at her. "I'm not hitting confirm." He turned the laptop toward her. "You are." She stared at the blinking cursor, then clicked. The screen dimmed. Release confirmed. 4 days later, the world changed again. The second wave of documents was undeniable. International contracts, names, faces, account numbers, an entire black market logistics framework masquerading under the U.S. agricultural budget. It was no longer theory, no longer speculation. It was fact. The headlines didn't know what to do with it. Some screamed scandal. Others called it sabotage. A few tried to claim it was AI-generated disinformation, but too many threads connected. Too many whistleblowers emerged, newly emboldened by what the Merricks had made possible. Victor Hale's name surfaced in a leaked DOJ memo. He vanished the next day. Back in Nova Scotia, Lena and Aaron listened to the fallout over shortwave, Reports of hearings, resignations, and sanitized news pieces about logistical oversight and whistleblower protections. No one called them traitors anymore, but no one called them heroes either. They were ghosts now. One night, weeks later, Aaron left a burner phone on the porch railing. He'd written a single message and scheduled it to post automatically on a global message board tied to whistleblower archives. The message read, "We were the middlemen, but we saw the whole route, and we're still watching the road." Then he smashed the phone with a rock. Washington looked calm from above. Polished buildings, rehearsed suits, the illusion of order. But beneath the surface, old machinery was grinding, stripped of its quiet gears and forced to spin out in the open. A special congressional session was called. A dozen senators convened behind closed doors. The leaked documents had forced their hand. And not just the first wave. The second leak, the one Lena clicked into existence, had torn through departments like a slow-burning fuse. Too technical to spin, too specific to discredit, too real to ignore. It wasn't just the arms transfers. It was the process. The shell companies, the rebranded shipments, the systematic use of unwitting civilian transport to smuggle sensitive hardware quietly and deniably through American towns in broad daylight. Inside a dark conference room in Langley, the conversation was not about justice. It was about optics. The senior analyst adjusted his tie, then clicked to the next slide in the presentation. The screen read, "Vulnerability Report, Civilian Leakage Risk, Logistics and AMP, Family-Owned Firms." Until now, the assumption was that family haulers wouldn't look inside a well-sealed shipment, he said flatly. Merrick hauling proved otherwise. They were careful, smart, and they got help. He paused. We need to reassess assumptions, and we need to reframe our supply chain narrative before public trust collapses entirely. Someone near the window spoke. "Is there a plan?" The presenter hesitated, then pulled up a file labeled Restoration Protocol Black Birch. The file was heavily redacted. Contingency assets are being evaluated. A day later, on a private island off the coast of Georgia, Victor Hale stood at the edge of a dock, watching a cargo plane vanish into the haze. He was alive, but no longer in control. He hadn't run. Not exactly. He'd been moved, escorted off-grid by a private security firm that once subcontracted for Northridge Systems. They weren't bailing him out. They were preserving him. A woman approached, sharp suit, mirrored glasses, her steps too measured to be casual. "Mr. Hale," she said, "you're no longer operational." He didn't look at her. "And yet you brought me here." She handed him a small tablet. On the screen was a dossier, not on the Merricks, but on 4 other haulers flagged in the leaked documents. Men and women who hadn't yet come forward. "You built the system," she said. "Now someone else will clean it." He scrolled to the last page. The file read, "Project Black Birch, Rebuilding Compartmentalized Freight Control. Controlled Release Phase begins Q2. Hale looked up. "You're going to do it again." "No," she said. "We're going to do it better." Back in Nova Scotia, Lena felt it. Not in the news, not in a headline, in her gut. The way the leak had gone silent again. Not gone, just managed. As if the story had been absorbed by something bigger than truth. Aaron sat by the fire, tinkering with the transmitter he was building from old parts. "They're coming back, aren't they?" he asked. Lena didn't answer right away. Then, softly, "Not the same way. They'll wear different coats, different lies." Aaron nodded. "So what do we do?" She sipped her tea, staring into the trees. "We stay off the map." Then she added, "But not off the grid." It started with a click, not a bang, not a break-in. Just a single, brief click on the ham radio Aaron had been repairing for weeks. He looked up from his soldering iron, confused. The set wasn't tuned to an active frequency. Just a wide-band scan of static and noise. Then came the signal. 3 tones, equal length. Repeated every 10 seconds. Lena leaned in. "That's not an open frequency." "No," Aaron said. "It's encoded." He recorded the loop and ran it through a decrypting script Reyes had written before Bar Harbor. The tones translated into a coordinate ping and a short burst of plain text. "They're using new names. See the yard. Underneath that, Baltimore, 17th Pier. 2 o'clock. Lena stared at it. Aaron whispered, "It's him." She didn't ask how he knew. It was the cadence, the kind of message Reyes had built for emergencies, back when they first gone into hiding. But Reyes was dead. She'd watched him bleed out in Bar Harbor. Hadn't she? They debated it for hours. Reason said stay hidden. They'd done enough. The files were out. The world had its truth. But instinct told Lena something darker. Someone else had picked up where Northridge left off. Faster, quieter, and more careful. And if Reyes was alive, or if someone was using his systems, it meant the network still had holes. She ran her hands over a folded map of the East Coast. Baltimore was far. Risky. But she knew the pier it mentioned, an old military freight yard, decommissioned years ago, but rumored to still be used for low-visibility exports. Aaron looked up from his laptop. "If we go, we may not make it back." Lena nodded. "If we don't, someone else ends up driving the next payload." They left before dawn, taking a weathered SUV they'd paid for in cash from a lobster fisherman 3 towns over. Lena drove, while Aaron wiped every digital trace he could find. Email, forums, backup mirrors. They disappeared again, but this time with purpose. By the time they reached New Brunswick, snow had turned to sleet, and the roads were ribbons of cold black oil. At the border, they used the IDs Reyes had forged months earlier. The guards barely looked at them. Just another mother and son headed to Maine for a family emergency. By midnight, they were on the outskirts of Baltimore. The 17th Pier was a graveyard of rusted shipping containers, old cranes, and shadows that moved wrong if you looked too long. Lena parked 4 blocks away and approached on foot, her coat pulled low, her revolver tucked against her spine. Aaron followed with a handheld scanner, tracing for wireless signals. Something pinged. Faint, intermittent, a shortwave pulse coming from one of the inner yard structures. They slipped through a gap in the fencing and ducked behind a container. Fane Constatacher men. Then they saw it. Fane Constatacher men. A trailer. New. Too clean. Parked between abandoned forklifts. It had government plates. Outside, 2 men in black coats smoked cigarettes and spoke in low voices. One held a clipboard. "Mining." Aaron zoomed in with a telephoto lens. The clipboard had a logo, a new one neither of them had seen before. ABL, American Border Logistics. Underneath, Manifest 00492B. Reclassified transfer. Agricultural monitoring units. Lena whispered, "They're doing it again." "No," Aaron said. "They never stopped. They just changed the name." They crept around the side, camera in hand, catching shots of the plates, the manifest, the men. Then Lena froze. A figure stepped out of the trailer. Gray coat. Beard. Reyes. Alive. He moved like someone recovering from a war, slower, cautious. But it was him. A thin scar now ran down the side of his temple. He said something to the men, handed over a folder, then disappeared back inside. Lena gripped Aaron's arm. "Why is he here?" "Could be a plant," Aaron said. "Could be deep cover. Or a double." They waited until the 2 guards moved away, then ducked forward and planted a listening device under the trailer's wheel hub. Aaron synced it with his receiver. Inside, voices echoed. "We confirmed the route to Barstow. No way stations, no inspections. Pre-cleared." "What about the contractor?" "Never met him. Hale gave us the specs before he vanished. Said the haulers don't need to know the cargo." "And Reyes?" A pause. "He's in too deep to pull out now." Lena pulled back, cold knot forming in her chest. Aaron looked at her. "Either he's compromised, or this whole thing's bigger than even he thought." Back at the motel that night, they uploaded the audio to a dark forum, attaching only 1 line. "Same playbook, different name. Round 2 has already begun." They didn't sleep. They didn't speak. And in the morning, they planned their next move. The next day was gray and wet. The kind of weather that made the entire city feel like a damp secret. Lena and Aaron didn't speak as they watched the trailer from a rooftop across the yard. Reyes came and went twice, once alone and once with a man in a suit, younger, sharp, the kind that didn't smile unless it was part of a script. They took photos, logged times, recorded conversations, but surveillance only answered questions that people were willing to say out loud. To get the truth, they had to go inside. Reyes left the trailer at 2:17 p.m. and walked across the yard toward a small side office built into a container. The guards stayed behind. That was their window. Almost size. Lena moved fast. Covered in a rain-slick windbreaker and boots 2 sizes too big, she slipped through a gap in the fence, cutting across the lot's blind side. Aaron waited in the stolen van, laptop open, live streaming her location through a private line in case she didn't come out. She knocked on the side of the container like Reyes had taught her once. 2 taps. Pause. 1 more. The door opened. His eyes went wide. "Lena?" "Inside," she said. He didn't fight her. Inside, the trailer smelled of printer ink, wet metal, and something electric. The air was heavy, with heat from a rack of servers humming against the far wall. Not weapons, not hardware. "Data. Where's your team?" she asked. "They think I'm out briefing a contact." "Are you?" He didn't answer. Lena looked around. "You're not tracking shipments. You're building narratives." Reyes sat down, shoulders low. "They pulled me in after Bar Harbor. Said they could bury me or give me a purpose." "What purpose?" "To make sure the next wave is clean, tidy, believable." "You're working for them?" He laughed bitterly. "I'm working to keep the next Merrick family from being vaporized by a headline. You think I wanted this?" Lena moved to the server rack. "What is this?" Reyes rubbed his eyes. "It's not just freight anymore. They've evolved. They're building fake logistics stories, inventing entire trucking companies, fake protests, leaks that never existed, seeding both sides of every narrative. Right, left, whistleblower, debunker. They own the script now." Lena stared at him, horrified. "You're building ghosts. I'm choosing the least dangerous ghosts." That's what Hale said once. He flinched, then turned his monitor toward her. A video feed appeared. Security footage from an upcoming protest in Pittsburgh. A truck rally. Dozens of rigs, signs, chants. "You recognize any of them?" Reyes asked. She looked closer and realized every driver in the video had the same face with slight differences. AI generated. Synthetic. "None of them are real," she said. "They will be, by next month." The news outlets already have the story drafts. Back at the van, Aaron picked up a second signal, a duplicate audio feed from another trailer across the yard. He ran a facial recognition pass on one of the guards outside. The match came back. Private sector. DHS contractor. Previously listed as missing in action during a covert training mission in Turkey. Aaron's stomach turned. These weren't just guards. They were ghosts, too. In the trailer, Lena stepped back from the monitors. "They're building a false resistance," she said. "A fake second wave." Reyes nodded. "They'll burn it in public, use it to bury any future leaks under the banner of fabricated outrage, make the population immune to the truth." He opened the drawer and pulled out a manila envelope. Inside, a printed manifest, one labeled not with parts or components, but with names. Journalists, truckers, bloggers, union reps. All flagged with metadata codes, seed, shadow, or erase. "These are the real targets," Reyes said. "People who still believe truth matters. They're not tracking cargo anymore. They're tracking narratives." Lena held the paper, feeling the weight of it. Then she looked him in the eye. "You're going to help us shut it down." Reyes didn't argue. He just said, "We'll have to move fast." Baltimore's sky turned black before sunset. Not from weather. From smoke. A controlled explosion was reported at a commercial freight warehouse outside the harbor. Local authorities claimed faulty wiring. Federal agents cordoned off the scene before the first fire truck arrived. Lena, Aaron, and Reyes watched the plume from a rooftop across town. "That wasn't an accident," Reyes said. "No," Lena replied. "It was a reset. Someone wiped the server farm." Aaron looked down at his tablet, scanning an internal memo Reyes had pulled from the trailer's network just before they bailed. The title read, "Operation Signal Fall, Narrative Deterrence and AMP, Domestic Stabilization Directive, Scheduled Launch, 72 hours. Below, a bullet point list. Deployment of synthetic news stories to 36 national media outlets. Infiltration of protest and labor groups with fabricated identities. Leak of falsified Merrick memo to delegitimize prior exposures. Public justification. Enhanced Security Authorization Act, ESAA." Aaron looked up. "They're going to use us to justify locking down the country," Reyes nodded. "They created a villain. Now they're about to roll out the cure. They needed help, but couldn't go to anyone official. So they went to someone unofficial. A name from the old manifest Reyes had shown them. Samantha Voss, an ex-FEMA analyst turned cyber forensics investigator, now running a podcast that danced on the line between whistleblowing and survivalism. No one took her seriously until the leak. Now her listeners numbered in the millions. They met her in an empty church outside Harrisburg. Lights off, pews dusty. She wore a parka, mirrored glasses, and a pistol on her hip. "Can't believe I'm meeting the Merricks," she said, shaking Lena's hand. "You're like Bigfoot, and JFK's ghost had a baby." Aaron rolled his eyes. "Charming." Reyes laid out the plan. They had recovered enough data from the trailer to prove that Operation Signal Fall was pre-scripted, a synthetic event with pre-written media reactions, seeded commentary, and even AI-generated testimonials from witnesses. But they needed distribution. Samantha listened, thought, then said, "My server's compromised, and so's half the deep web." "But not all of it," Aaron said, pulling a flash drive from his coat. "What's that?" "The second half of the leak," he said. "The one we never uploaded." Back in a rented motel room in Delaware, they got to work. Reyes decrypted the last files. Aaron coded a tracker into the upload, one that would piggyback the documents onto every known duplicate of the first leak, turning the initial story into a living file that kept evolving. Samantha recorded a video to accompany it. Just her, raw, no filters. She looked into the camera and said, "Boo, boo, boo. They told you we were radicals, but they're the ones writing the explosions before the bombs go off. They say they're protecting America, but all they're protecting is the script. This is your call. Don't trust us. Don't trust them. Trust what you can see. And now, you can see everything." She hit upload. It went viral in 6 hours, not because it was flashy, because it felt real. And in a world of polished deception, that was more powerful than proof. Users began comparing the, quote, upcoming security proposals to pages in the leak. They matched perfectly. Journalists who had ignored the Merrick story the first time now dug in. The words "Signal Fall" began trending. Within 12 hours, the White House denied the leak, then offered no comment. That was the tell. Within 24, a planned DHS press conference was postponed indefinitely. And within 36, senators on both sides of the aisle called for a full hearing on false flag simulations and federal narrative manipulation. Victor Hale saw the fallout from a coastal estate in Portugal, where his security detail had shrunk by half. Beige. He poured a drink, sat by the fire, watched the headlines spin out of his grasp, then smiled. Round 3's going to be interesting. In an undisclosed location, the Merricks waited. Lena held a new passport, new name, new country in her future. Aaron held a transmitter, still building, still modifying, still watching. Reyes stared out a window. "They'll try again," he said. "They always do," Lena replied. "And when they do," Aaron didn't look up, "we'll be there first." By the end of the week, the official story had cracked. Not collapsed, but cracked in places no amount of spin could patch. The headlines changed tone. What started as "Radical Trucking Family Behind Conspiracy Leak" became "Investigative Committee Questions Role of Private Contractors in Data Laundering Operation." And then, "Anonymous Sources Suggest Agency Knew of Leak, Allowed Narrative to Spread for Political Leverage." The Washington Observer published a damning expose titled "The Script Factory: How Manufactured Outrage Nearly Sparked a Security State." Photos of Lena and Aaron long blurred and distorted in prior coverage, were now treated with neutrality. Some articles even called them reluctant truth-tellers. Others just said whistleblowers, like the word absolved the past. Walt's name was cleared in a quietly released court transcript. No apology, just a quiet seal of record. He was still missing from public view. In a closed-door hearing on Capitol Hill, Reyes testified via secure stream under a pseudonym. He answered questions methodically, revealing fragments. Just enough to confirm the leak's authenticity, just enough to implicate Northridge Systems, Field Tech, and a half-dozen smaller shell firms. One senator leaned in and asked, "Is there a Victor Hale?" Reyes answered, "There was. Whether there still is, I couldn't say." In an apartment in Montreal, Lena watched the hearing replay on a second-hand laptop. She didn't smile. She didn't speak. She'd learned long ago that victory wasn't loud. It was quiet. It was watching the world not fall apart because you kept it from doing so. Aaron entered the room carrying a rolled-up printout from a friend across the border. A bootleg copy of a newspaper comic strip someone had anonymously distributed across colleges in the Midwest. The strip showed a semi-truck driving across a map. In the back of the trailer wasn't cargo, it was paper. Classified, shredded, and blowing out behind it like confetti across the states. The driver looked like Lena. The kid in the passenger seat was unmistakably Aaron. The strip had no title, no caption, just one panel, a sign on the road. "You're leaving the script. Drive safe." They hung it above the sink. 3 weeks later, a black sedan pulled up to a courthouse in Vermont. The driver stepped out wearing mirrored sunglasses, placed a sealed box in the after-hours drop, and drove away. Inside the box, 3 original hard drives. A handwritten note in Reyes's blocky, clinical handwriting. A USB marked Hale's Ledger. The note read, "If you're reading this, you're already too late to bury it." The ledger contained payment trails, encrypted memos, and a partial client list that stretched into elected offices, corporate media, and international defense liaisons. The fuse hadn't stopped burning. It had just found the next charge. One final thread remained. In a shuttered strip mall in Utah, a nondescript man in his late 50s ordered coffee from a drive-thru. The barista didn't know his face. No one did anymore. In the trunk of his car was a briefcase. Inside it, a Field Tech prototype manifest, 2 undeployed synthetic identity kits, a sealed envelope marked, "For deployment, Black Birch Phase 2. He opened the envelope. Inside, a single card. Approved. Route pre-cleared. Candidate family profile attached. On the back, a faded photo. A new trucking couple. Real. Small town. Clean record. Perfect. It rained on the day Lena finally visited the grave. It wasn't much of a grave, just a quiet hill in rural New Hampshire, where Reyes had arranged for Walt's ashes to be scattered after a private handoff behind the scenes. There was no headstone, just a tree planted by Aaron and a flat stone marked W.M. Father. Hauler. Witness. Lena stood beside it in a simple jacket, gloves tucked into her back pocket, a folded U.S. flag in her hand. She didn't cry. Not anymore. But she did speak. "He'd be proud," she said to the wind. "You held the line." Aaron placed a small plaque beneath the stone. It read, "Truth doesn't travel fast, but it gets there eventually." They stood in silence for a while. Then Aaron handed her a burner phone with a new secure message. Sender unknown. The subject line. Final manifest confirmed. Inside was a list of names. High level. New. A data dump scheduled to hit in 2 weeks. Targeting the next generation of narrative engineers. Spun from the ashes of Field Tech, Northridge, and American border logistics. Aaron looked up. "It's happening again." Lena nodded. "It never stopped." He paused. "Do we answer it?" Lena pocketed the phone. "Not yet. Let it breathe. Let someone else try to fix it first." She smiled. Just barely. But if they don't? Aaron returned the smile. We drive. That night, they went back to Montreal, to the apartment above the bookstore where they'd been living under aliases. On the wall beside the window was a map of the U.S., dotted with pins, red string, and notes. Not of past routes, of future ones, the kind worth tracking. Across the map, a single word was written in sharp black ink. Watchpoint. Aaron took a fresh pen and stuck it into a new location. Des Moines, Iowa. Why Des Moines? Lena asked. He flipped open a printout, a classified route manifest for an agricultural trade show with attached military waivers. Because something just got scheduled there that doesn't belong. Lena chuckled. You're worse than your grandfather, Aaron shrugged. I had good teachers. Across the continent, in a fortified estate, buried in the Nevada desert, a boardroom buzzed with voices, old names and new ones, folding themselves into corporate wrappers and cybernetic trust funds. One man stood before the group, younger than Hale, smoother, not military, architectural. He clicked a remote and displayed a headline. Merrick leak verified by Senate committee. Internal crackdown inevitable. He smiled. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, public trust is now a programmable resource, and the next wave won't rely on trucks. It'll ride on platforms, filters, and feed design. He paused. But we'll still need carriers. Quiet ones. He clicked to the next slide. A photo of a nondescript box truck parked outside a school. Back in Montreal, Lena closed the window, killed the lights, and sat beside Aaron as he traced another route through the Midwest. They didn't talk about heroes. They didn't talk about endings. They talked about roads and which ones to follow, but not the last road.